Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 53 of Humanity Rising. Every day since the 22nd of May, we've been broadcasting live to people all over the world between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock p.m. Central European Time as an offering from Ubiquity University to the larger community, so that people from literally all over can come together on a daily basis and share what they're experiencing as we all navigate our way through this extraordinary pandemic, which is lasting a lot longer than I think most of us thought when it began. Most of us are under some kind of lockdown still. We're all still engaging in social distancing. And we're all pondering how we can use this crisis as an opportunity for human renewal. And we've covered an extraordinary array of subjects. We've heard from people from all walks of life. And we're delighted that we are able to broadcast every day to about 15,000 people. And we are also on our Facebook page, if that works better for you, and various of our 50 channel partners. Today we contemplate light centers. It's an extraordinary phenomenon of human history that in times of chaos, communities of light pop up. And some are effervescent and disappear after a short period of time. Others endure over time and provide an ongoing illumination to the human community. One thinks, for example, of the Buddhist Sangha. You know, the Buddhist Sangha is the longest continuously operating light center in history. The Buddhist community, now spread around the world, has endured for over 2,500 years. One thinks of Plato's Academy. Plato withdrew from Athens after the execution of Socrates in 399 BC and established his school. It was called the Academy because it was in a grove of trees. And the illumination of Plato's Academy has endured in its philosophical illumination for the last 2,500 years. And his academy as a physical entity lasted for 900 years. One thinks of the monastic communities in the 4th and 5th century. It's important to just remember that as the Germanic and Northern European tribes invaded Rome and sacked Rome in the 5th century, it was the monasteries that gathered the relics, that gathered the sacred books, that gathered the wisdom of antiquity into the monasteries. And because of that, we have what we have from deep antiquity. One thinks of Sri Aurobindo's center, Pondicherry, in India, on the east coast of India. It's the largest community of its kind anywhere in the world. One thinks of Findhorn, which burst into the popular imagination in the 1960s and 70s with Peter and Eileen Caddy and growing huge vegetables. And the illumination of Findhorn has been with us to the present day. One thinks of Ross Jackson in Denmark that founded the Global Eco Village Network, which has now got several thousand light centers off-grid, on-grid, organic farms, intentional communities, literally all over the world. So as we think of the pandemic, we often think of nation states, and we think of big institutions, and we think of how we're going to navigate through a massive rethinking of economic theory. But it is often, from a historical point of view, small little light centers that preserve the essential wisdom of the past and also provide an illumination to the larger community in the present. So today we're going to be looking at light communities and discussing how they can contribute to the greater good at this crucial moment in our collective journey, where scientists are telling us that we're literally running out of time to renew human society in a way that is contributive to a world that is more sustainable and abundant and healthy and resilient and in alignment with natural systems. So I'm delighted to introduce my good friend and colleague, Peter Merry, who has deep experience in these matters, and he will initiate our program for today. Thank you all so much. And if you want to ask any questions or make comments, please do so in the chats that you find at the bottom of your screen or in the Q&A box. And Peter and the panel will be monitoring what you're saying, and we hope for an interactive dialogue for the next 90 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Good to be back. And just on that chat thing, make sure if you do want to chat and you want to say something that everybody sees, that next to the to thing on that blue drop-down menu, you select all panelists and attendees, and then everybody will be able to see it. So yes, this is an exciting session for me. It came about because via a number of synchronicities, I ended up at this incredible location in Yorkshire, which also just Yorkshire Dales happen to be my favorite place on the planet, and ended up with an invitation to Broughton Hall, which is this beautiful estate, 3,500 acres, 3,500 acres, just on the kind of southeast corner of the Dales, and found a remarkable thing happening there. Roger Tempest and Paris Ackrill, who you'll be hearing from in a minute, had taken this estate that Roger had inherited, and with a vision to really make it a model for how things could be done differently, including a rewilding of the whole 3,500 acres of a beautiful center for personal development and retreats there, and a vision to really turn it into a place as an attractor for people to come and presence the future of how things really could be in themselves and around them. In these kind of times of chaos, the systems thinkers say what often happens is that what appear is what they call islands of coherence. So these are places that somehow are presencing the future and attempting to really bring into matter the future that we're desiring. And I think Broughton is one of those islands of coherence that can really attract people to see how things could be done differently. So we invited Roger and Paris to share their story with us of what they're doing at Broughton, how they're seeing the movement, and to invite a number of people to join them and provide their perspective on what the role that these centers of light could be playing in the world. So Paris and Roger are each going to give us an introduction first, and then they're going to introduce us to each of the people they brought along, who'll make a short statement, and then we'll go into more of a dialogue around it. So Paris and Roger, over to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to hand over to Paris straight away, who will be talking for just under 10 minutes.
Yeah, Thank you so much, Jim and Peter, for inviting us to be part of this. We're delighted to be here, and thank you to everyone from Humanity Rising who's been helping us behind the scenes as well, Mary and Matt, and our lovely panelists who you'll be meeting later. So we are broadcasting from Avalon, our light centre in Yorkshire, exactly in the centre of the UK. Today, we're going to be sharing our insights and feelings behind the role of physical light centres in this movement of spiritual awakening and mind-body-spirit transformation, along with our mission here at Avalon. In the legend of King Arthur, Avalon was an island of spiritual refuge, and this is what we seek to become. As we all know, we are facing huge challenges on Earth: health, political, ecological, social, and economic crises. Our belief is that light centers can provide a unique space for inspiration, growth, hope, and peace during what we foresee to be a period of intense transition on Earth, as places which can play a key role in helping to accelerate a positive change for the human trajectory. Centers of light are places which can birth new visions, and those visions must come from each and every one of us. Avalon is a 3,000-acre sanctuary with a cluster of both historic and new buildings and facilities on the land. From the historic house, Broughton Hall, built in 1597, which is incredibly the only Fibonacci number in over 1,000 years, to a state-of-the-art Wellbeing Centre, to converted farmhouses used for retreat accommodation. We are a physical and geographical manifestation and representation of the transformational movement. Our mission is serving a new way of life through helping people to find their ultimate art of being, to connect with their sense of purpose, and to become a force for good in the world. You will be familiar with the expression, peace begins within. And this is something we inherently believe will be the catapult for awakening. Of course, systems need to change, but these changes will start as shifts in awareness, which first need to be sparked and seeded within the individual, and then grounded into everyday lives. How can we create peace and understanding in the world if we cannot even create it in ourselves, our families, or homes? This is where centers of light can play their role to host this dialogue. A center of light is beyond spas, beyond pampering. We are about journeying into the mystical, exploring consciousness, wisdom, shadow work, what it is to be human, self-knowledge, taking responsibility, finding solutions, healing patterns which no longer serve, lifestyle management, re-establishing and celebrating values, and the journey of sacred activism. Change which can flower through an inner responsibility, shifts in awareness, and active participation. Light centers can take many forms, and at Avalon, we are a venue for the inner journey, providing retreats and processes such as Path of Love, hosted by Raffia Morgan, with us on the panel today, self-development retreats for groups or companies, gatherings for leaders and change makers, and New Thought Movement conferences. Brooks Cole, also with us on the panel, first came to Avalon as part of a group actually called Transformational Leaders. Lawrence, Sophie, and Peter all attended our Wisdom Weekend this spring. Large-scale change can be seeded from light centers, to business leaders and allies meeting and joining here to create change and to helping foster new ways of being. We host a wide range of content, from the well-known Hoffman process, Path of Love, Ridwan School, the Compassionate Mental Health Conference, from yoga to womb retreats, menopause conferences, to retreats held by Indigenous groups. We hosted some wonderful Guatemalan Mayan elders last year. And what we believe is of great importance for light centers is being non-dogmatic spaces, as places where we can rise above politics or single issue groups. At Avalon, we are not pushing anything onto anyone. No religion or particular philosophy. We are here to support the journey of life. People can come here and take away what they need and leave the rest. When we take a particular standpoint, we risk isolating individuals and favoring particular causes, and we do not want to become part of the divisive movements. Rather, we are more interested in integration, the inner state, and solution-based activism. Who are we? What are we doing? Where are we going? Avalon hopes to champion the way of the heart. Centers of light can play a vital role in being a place where difference comes together to be celebrated, where tolerance becomes a foundation for freedom, and where we can understand each other with compassion. In this great vision of birthing a new humanity, we must welcome people of different backgrounds, philosophies, and faiths. We have a duty to make this fundamental exploration of the human journey accessible to all. To meet this necessity, at Avalon, we have a wide range in accommodation options and a foundation which supports free, discounted, or volunteer places on retreats. To create deep and lasting change, we have to break away from ingrained patterns and cycles of conditioning. It can help to physically step outside of our everyday lives, to mentally give ourselves the space to explore, envision, and build anew. Here lies the importance of a center of light, a physical space which specifically supports a deep dive within. Cultivating a trusted container through hosting the best facilitators to respectful space holding. We are a purposefully held space for this sensitive work, with a duty to inspire on many levels. Centers of light have a responsibility to foster ecologically positive relationships with the earth. With the responsibility of land, we become guardians to care for the earth for the next generations. At Avalon, we're doing this through an extensive nature recovery program over the coming years. Through planting of 750,000 trees and shrubs, turning 450 acres into scrub and woodland in phase 1 and rewilding within this. We'll be restoring blanket bog, native woodland, and semi-natural grasslands. We will nurture grasslands in a way that restores soil health and locks up carbon. We will also slow the flow of water across the land, using new hedges, ponds, and woodlands to reduce flash floods in larger towns and cities downstream, as well as keeping our rivers clean. We are creating a foraging forest. Eating locally and seasonally is good for the earth and the body. If you go somewhere like the Amazon rainforest, you can physically feel the vibrancy of nature restoring every layer of your being. There is evidence which suggests that spending time outdoors can actually promote the growth of anti-cancer cells, as well as reducing cortisol, improving our mood, energy levels, and overall health and well-being. So what if, instead of medical prescriptions, when appropriate, we can give people green prescriptions? Cultivating more vibrant habitats enables us to feel truly alive in every cell, as well as contributing to making the planet a healthier place to live. Programs which enable a realization of our inherent connection with the earth, such as foraging, herbal medicine, forest bathing, ecotherapy, encourage greener lifestyles which are more considerate of our interconnectedness on earth. Peter, maybe if there's an appropriate moment, you could share a little of your energetic work as well as Kaylin's that you've done on the land.
Oh, thanks, Paris. Yeah, just to say that they've been thinking not only about the kind of biological and ecological sense of things, but also the energetic landscape that infuses it. So Kaylin, who I know is on the call here as well, has been helping to identify, in a way, acupuncture points on the land and finding the rocks that would sit at those acupuncture points that take the information or the electromagnetic field and then bring that into the land, as well as creating a beautiful labyrinth on the land. So it's been really great to see how you've been thinking at these multiple levels of both the ecological, biological, as well as the energetic.
Thank you, Peter. In conclusion now, there has been research on the effects of meditation groups on local areas. Regular meditation circles have been shown to reduce crime in communities. What a beautiful example of pockets of light and localized responsibility emerging from within individuals. As Peter said, when he first came here, he called us an island of coherence, referring to the work of HeartMath. Light centers are of service in creating coherence and harmony on the ground through providing inspirational, grounded commitment to the work of serving a new way of life, from bridging the best of the old with the best of the new, providing practical tools which will enable those who visit to experience coherence within themselves. And in this tuning up of the inner antennae, it is then possible to take home new knowledge, integrated wisdom, and practices to manifest coherence more regularly within, to find the joy of being of service in our everyday lives in a practical and grounded way. So now over to my partner, Roger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paris. Okay. Thank you, Paris, my wonderful co-founder, partner, and mother of my beautiful daughter, Aya. Thank you. Thank you, Peter, also today for chairing today, and Ubiquity for creating this much needed and impressive platform, Humanity Rising. And also many thanks to my extraordinary panel here today, some very special change makers, sense makers, and brave hearts, really, who give us so much of themselves to the future of humanity. I'd like to start today with a sort of background of where we might be in these strange and yet exciting times. Society's strengths and weaknesses are becoming abundantly clear, and the spiritual human evolution now needs to transcend the inadequate ideas and behaviors of the past. The huge wealth of knowledge and wisdom within the field of human existence must now be tapped in a way that has never happened before. We need to present ourselves with the possibility of a truly new golden age. There will be changes of emphasis which will lead to great changes within society. We're talking about ideas which are way beyond the old politics, the old religions, and the old behaviors. It's a new form of universalism, an art of being. We'll be seeing the vital need to look at the inner guru and the choices that we're able to make within ourselves rather than the dominance of the outer guru, which has been so prevalent. Choices imposed upon us in our current way of living. We will need to rediscover that our core value systems can be reorientated so that world can be harmonious in a way we coexist with our fellow humans and coexist with nature. The era of a new type of personal responsibility will begin to emerge again, and the old concept of forced state-led provision will begin to wither on the vine. We have learned over and over again that the human spirit does not accept it being imposed upon us. It has to come from the individual. The true state will be the state within us. At our Centre of Light here at Avalon, we intend this manifesto to flourish and grow, to assist and support awakening people on life's journey. This tapestry of all the other light centres around the world will help to create this tsunami of change which is so integral to our survival and future. This is not a revolution. This is a kind reformation which can live within every human being, whatever your politics, religion, philosophy, or tribe. There's been widespread deceit and delusion, in particular through the last century and into this one, creating huge divisions and hurt in our society. We now question at a fundamental level whether we can call the last century's civilization at all. whether the hundreds of millions of people who have been killed as a result of experimental politics, from Chairman Mao, Stalin to Pol Pot, Hitler, or to the individual harm each one of us creates within ourselves. We can see that it's not only a matter of time before the trigger for change was going to be pulled. In the same way as fire was first discovered, so it will be with a new form of cooperation with ourselves and our neighbours, which can change the world into a more harmonious and miraculous place. During this time of change, which could have a transition period of, say, 20 years, we need to be cautious and careful about the old delusional ideas resurfacing, and we all need to be strong enough to identify that this will not be the path to take. The new path will involve compromise, tolerance, a journey into the unknown and unproven, compassion, a cultural shift. It will be the portal to a new society. Single issue groups and movements will all have to learn to coexist. The responsibility of freedom and choice will have to be treasured in a way that seems to have been long forgotten. The era of expectation, entitlement, and so-called rights will have to subside. The solutions are perhaps all based with our own personal responsibility and rediscover of true core values, an alchemy long sought after by our hearts and minds. What has become abundantly apparent at this huge change point in time is that we need more than ever the people and places to provide for the vision of the future. It's not really coming from our existing leadership, our politicians, our traditional religions, educational institutions, or even with our own family homes. We seem to be lost as a race. So today we discuss that the growing centers of light can provide a vital platform and catalyst for this birthing of this new humanity. And with that paradigm shift can regain our art of being. On one level, it's perhaps the most serious challenge the human race has ever had. To be or not to be, that is the question. We are getting the sense of what is breaking down, but what is breaking through? We have whole movements wanting to get rid of the past, but what are they replacing it with? In reality, where are the new visions for the now and future coming from? Are we happy waking up in the morning and wondering whether there's going to be potential civil war in the US or other countries, worldwide economic collapse, biological warfare with COVID-type weaponry, to worldwide military-style 9/11 attacks? Or do we choose a new route of reformation and rediscovery and understand there is another way of living and being? As humans, we have deep darkness and light within our own very nature. We'll have to navigate this journey very carefully. Parents and schools and the state system just do not seem to be providing the right environment, and we seem to have become prisoners of ourselves and the way we live. There is an increasing sense of urgency to wake up and become aware. We're still poisoning our bodies, our minds, our oceans, our lands. The psyche of the human being has become so distorted now, whether we're being permanently distracted by data and our screens as a way of life. Perhaps we have just forgotten how to be. We have become lost. The decline and sense of hopelessness needs reversing quickly, and hope and a new sense of purpose put back into us. We have surely overindulged ourselves as human beings. Our meaning of life has become highly distorted and corrupted. We judge ourselves and define ourselves by materialistic success. Unhappiness reigns close to the surface. Do we want to continue on the same trajectory? Bob Dylan so aptly put in his song, Precious Angel, how weak were the foundations we were standing upon. The choice seems increasingly stark, and we need visionaries and places such as these centers of light, which are the seedbed for the change needed. Surely the world needs places to help with this massive reassessment, which must come now. So we need to create environments for this, and this is the moment to finally consider deep reformation work on the inner state rather than the outer state. Our inner guru leading to inner transformation, creating outer change, learning to live peacefully among difference. We're talking about a new frontier of thought, a massive realignment of where we've got to as humans, and the opportunity for a giant reset. Like the Enlightenment took decades to emerge, maybe we're at the start of this much needed reformation and renaissance. for the further evolution of the human spirit. For this reformation to succeed, it needs the people and centres to provide a trusted place for guidance, support, and a geographic forum to be a cradle for this evolution of all the accumulated wisdom and change needed. These centres can all coexist with each other, and the learning and wisdom is transported in many different ways, whether through the geographic or online current platforms. A place where transformation of the individual occurs that leads to positive influence on the outer community and a realignment of how to be human. Sanctuaries which look after our inner and outer nature, a physical venue for transformation, teachers, community, influence, and leadership. We must not underestimate individual small-scale change, localization, which all accumulate and add up. This is heart-centered, not purely academic, intuitive well-being. So light centers provide space for investigations into spiritual and self-reformation. It is from this space that the new will emerge. New visions must emerge, and they must be a marriage of the best of the old and the new, not to repeat dangerous patterns which have replayed again and again throughout history and held us back. We can actually see them playing out right now. So these light centers will evolve and they'll become beacons of hope, a universal type of force which puts us back in touch with our divine and spirit and core values and the very art of being. They are the acceptance that change and transformation is necessary in life in these challenging times. We need places which can transmit messages. It's the message, not the messenger. And these centers have to be attractive as they're doing important work. They need to have good facilities for this work, good residential qualities, the finest facilitators and content, Wi-Fi, even hot water, good studio and workspaces to educate and support people on their life journey in this rapidly evolving world. Everybody is welcome, nobody is excluded, and they can actually stay here in a hermit hut or historic house, down to them. Our Light Centre here is becoming fully activated with tools to help. Although our calendar retreats are our main focus, we have a wide variety of activities to support the individual. It could be fire temples for drumming, storytelling, dance, sweat lodges, moonbathing, screaming fields, barefoot walking, cosmic gardens, labyrinths, hermit huts, sound meditations, therapists of all types, sharing groups. We even have a recovery centre just about to be launched here. The list goes on, but all these are portals to help the individual and group journeys. We need to have these places that walk the talk and attract what has been missing in helping with people's life's journey. Also the physical projects, such as our rewilding and nature recovery projects, these have to work hand in hand with the spirit work. Here at this sanctuary, it's very real. This is a community of enterprise, people exhibiting their livelihoods, people full of human endeavor with all the normal services of any rural normal community. Schools, pubs, agricultural life. We're talking about the integration of all this new movement into our daily lives. It has to be relevant. It's all about evolving and making it real and being relevant to each person's life. So as these centers of light evolved, it's less about revolution and more about reformation and renaissance, lost values and wisdom being rediscovered, not new age, but new frontier. The work is centering on the inner state of human beings and the art of being, heart and solution-led. No street demonstrations are needed here yet. These centers will become a tapestry of light across the world, and all will join up. And ultimately, these centers of light will exist within each one of us. They start with opening up to the beyond. So at Avalon, we talk about the idea of source being the essence of life, creation itself. All the philosophies and religions of the world are around the edges trying to access this source, this creation, these human constructs. They're trying to enter the source. Rumi said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field, I will meet you there. So here at Avalon, we're trying to create a metaphorical field which people can plug into. At the moment, we have the foundation of free-flowing communities coming in and out, of transformational leaders. We have Rebel Wisdom here, My Green Pod, Path of Love, Red One School, Flourish Institute. The list expands, and they all become part of this field. They can plug in and plug out. So we need to commit to making positive change in the ways we're able to be as individuals, and let it trickle out to all our friends and family and the wider communities we live in, and then to the world. So in conclusion, these light centers around the world are providing space for this new humanity to emerge, a place to come home to yourself and come home to nature, to your source, serving a new way of life, a sanctuary for the inner state. So we need these houses of transformation more than ever. They are the beacons of hope and force for good. It is time for radical action from the heart and our inner selves, a radical transformation of consciousness, and yes, a real awakening, a new era serving a new way of life. These centers for change will ultimately affect our politics, economic systems, religions, and how we live on this earth. Thank you.
Thank you both. Beautiful. Very inspiring, the chats. I haven't been able to keep up with them. People have been so touched. So beautiful to hear. And I'm going to hand it back to you now to kind of introduce the wonderful guests that you've brought along.
Wonderful.
Okay. Roger, would you like to introduce
Yes.
Lawrence?
And Rob, by the way, just people have asked for the transcript of your talk. So if you can send that to me, I'm happy to put it up in the UbiVerse.
Absolutely. I'm just going to
maybe you could post it yourselves.
Yeah. I'm just going to share a couple of a few pictures just to put it into, to put our little center of light into context. So this is the historic house, Broughton Hall. And that's within Avalon, in one of our studio spaces, a sound meditation. Then we have Avalon and Utopia and the hall in the background there. Our fire temple.
A bit about what Utopia is, Paris.
It's our cradle of nourishment. It's where a hub for food, and you can have some meetings there. And we also sometimes use it as a studio space. And then the hall's just peeking out behind. That's Avalon on the left there. And then that's the fire temple. And that's, oh yeah, our moon baths up on the moor. Sorry, it's taking a while. With the view there of the estate that we'll be rewilding and restoring to whatever it wants to be. And there's another shot of the fire temple there. So.
Good. Thank you, Paris.
And then you can.
Right, Peter, I'll introduce Lawrence Bloom, thinker, speaker, activist chairman. Lawrence is a dear friend of ours and of Avalon too. He's certainly helped us on our journey, and I personally, and I think Paris, have been very influenced by Lawrence's thinking. We did have a wisdom gathering called Spring Leap earlier this year. We had about 50 people there, and Lawrence gave a talk on the end of yesterday, which I'm very inspired by. His history is quite remarkable. He's currently Secretary General of the Be Earth Foundation, a UN intergovernmental organization which advises, assists and enables the importance and implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals on behalf of those countries with which it has treaties. But he's also been voted several times in the top 100 list of the world's most inspiring people. And and in Salt magazine, he was among the top 25 most conscious global leaders. So I think you get a picture of him. And Lawrence is very kindly going to give us 5 minutes now on his take on things.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I suppose it's all downhill from here with such an extraordinary introduction. But let me thank you first, both Paris and Roger, for a real substantive introduction. I've been to, obviously a number of times, to Broughton Hall. I just think it's beautiful, but your dedication both and your focus on making it a center of light are a genuine inspiration, which came through the talk that you just gave. And Jim, you're setting the context. I love context. I'm going to take that trajectory and discuss it now, because I think cometh the time, cometh the center, if you like, or cometh the academy. And Broughton Hall is one of an emerging group of centers of light that the author Ken Carey spoke about in Starseed Transmission as a grid of light that would form around the world. Let me just share with you a concept that I have within the context. I believe that over time, the human soul started undifferentiated, that you could start by identifying yourself, say, with the tribe, if you like, the tribe of Abraham. Over a period of time, that common soul, if you like, was able to differentiate to a tribe. So you could say, I'm from the race of Israelites, I'm from the tribe of Manasseh, or any one of those 12 tribes. And over time, this is obviously Western philosophy, over time, you could actually say, I'm son of or daughter of. So the soul became more and more individuated. And I think now we're at the moment when it's probably the most isolated and the most separate. The point of this is that as the soul individuates and becomes separate, the indigenous peoples understood that the skills that it acquired as an individuated individual, the skills that it acquired as a hunter or as a leader or as a healer, was there for the benefit of the tribe. And they would have initiation ceremonies that would bring the individual squaw or brave into alignment to understand their contribution, their responsibility, if you like, to the tribe. And over time, Western societies seem to lose that facility. And so they became individuated, and the actual gifts that they were given was not necessarily for the benefit of the whole. They became for the benefit of me. So we became more and more isolated, thinking that our gifts were for us individually, not for each other. And now we're at that point where we are losing connection as a species with each other. We're losing connection with the earth that gives us life. We're losing connection with the cosmos that gave us birth. We're losing connection with each other. Without each other, there's no meaning in our lives. That relationships that we have give meaning and purpose to our lives. And many of us have lost touch and lost connectedness with our true nature. And I think this idea of coming together in centers of light is really important, because it's in those centers that we rediscover our reconnectedness. We rediscover our connectedness to the land, to the cosmos, and to each other. And a new structure begins to be formed. We're now beginning to understand about the power of the morphogenic field. And it's highly possible that these centers of light actually create an intention within the morphogenic field itself. And sometimes we think it, but often it thinks us. And as it's thinking of us, those centers of light, which are growing globally, the eco-village centers, as you pointed out, and the Jim, and the Tamara, investigating relationships, and Damanhur, relationship with the star people. These are all important ingredients in a growing understanding through, I think, energizing the morphogenic field and giving us an opportunity to add an energy into the dimension of our thinking. It's a return of the oneness, if you like. It's a return of connectedness and a beginning of understanding our responsibilities to each other. We've gone through a period of our rights. I know my rights, read me my rights. But now we need to be thinking of our responsibilities and how we interrelate with each other. So there's a limit of 5 minutes. So I would actually like to just conclude this by saying it is part, I believe, of an evolutionary trajectory. I think we're more separate now as a society, let alone a species, than we've ever been. I think the centers of light have the capacity to bring us back together with new levels of connectedness. Who knows what will happen to the nation state or even the city state? But these centers may show communities of the future and how we might manage ourselves in the future. I like to end up with three thoughts. The first is mine. I say that we're in the middle of an intelligence test for humanity. The prizes for success, which is rediscovering our connectedness and our inherent love of each other, our prizes for success are beyond our wildest dreams, but the penalties for failure are beyond our worst nightmares. I also think that that the expression that Victor Hugo said about an idea whose time has come, these global centers of light are definitely an idea whose time has come. I think he said, an idea there is nothing more powerful in the world, nor all the armies, than an idea whose time has come. And the last is my favorite Rumi, which I'll slightly shorten, but read, the breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the doorsill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. So thank you for giving me this opportunity for a brief introduction, and I'll hand you back to Roger and Paris.
Thanks, Lawrence. I'm just going to jump in a minute, Roger, because I know you guys have been answering the chats, but unfortunately you've been answering them just back to the panelists, and a number of people are also just writing to the panelists. So I'm going to actually take just 10 seconds to show everybody what you have to do to make sure that your chat goes to the, oh, I can't see it now. Now that I've shared my screen, it's taken away my, Zoom screen. But what you need to do is, like, where you've got the chat, it says to, and then there's a kind of drop down menu, and it automatically says all panelists. What you need to do is select it and then go down to where it says all panelists and attendees. The next one, you see? Everybody see that, right? Because if you're just sending it to all panelists, only the panelists get to see it, which is a real shame. So if anybody's posted something that they want everybody to see, then please repost it under all panelists and attendees.
Will do. Thank you.
That's okay. But just to let everybody know, Paris and Roger have been diligently answering all your questions and comments. You've just not been seeing them, but they're coming. So whose screen is that? Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so
that was mine, Peter. The other thing is people can download that chat by clicking the box on the bottom right at any time, or at the end of the show. They can, get all the chats that have been occurring.
Brilliant. Thank
you. Back to you guys to introduce the next.
Okay, and this is being recorded anyway, so people can catch up on that. Now, Raffia Morgan. Hello, Raffia. Raffia's, he's been deeply involved with the spiritual and personal growth world, and has been working as a spiritual therapist and teacher for many years, many decades. He's the creator of many processes in the Osho therapy world, such as Inner Man, Inner Woman, Osho Tantra Intensive, Path of Love especially. And he's a remarkable man. We've been very lucky. He's been living with us at Avalon for some time now, and with Marguerite. And he's been such a good influence here. He's personally taught us, I think, both a lot. And we love his influence here and all he's learned. I think he's one of the most senior people in this field, really, and I'm very proud to introduce him now. There we go, Raffia.
Thank you, Raffia.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for creating this, and thank you for everyone who's producing it, and the speakers that have gathered. And I think for me, I've kind of recognized the need for centers of light, the global need, communities, places, and individuals to be centers of light. And I've just been I've followed that recognition and that need for a long time. And last year, in looking for a place to do some of my work, I came to visit Broughton Hall, and I was immediately knocked off my feet by Paris and Roger, by their vision, by the physical beauty, the overall attendance to detail, and the vision that they shared to maximize the opportunity that people could come here and have really meaningful and transformative experiences. And interestingly, at the beginning of this lockdown, I was in Costa Rica at one of the other speakers' Center of Light, Stefan Rechtschaffen at Blue Spirit. And I literally flew from Costa Rica from one spot to this spot. And I've been here ever since. And every day is a kind of delightful immersion into the creation that wants to happen here, and which has, of course, been interrupted by the events of the day. But I must say, I'm sure that as it is with me, it is with Roger and Paris and all the people that are going to eventually be able to come here. It's just been deepening that passion to wake up, to become involved, to become a center of light in yourself. So, and it's been my passion and to support with creating group processes since the 70s, really, to support the longing inside every human to realize their deep potential and deep desire to wake up, and to help facilitate what is it that your heart is most longing for, yearning for, and to create situations where people can really wholeheartedly investigate whatever it is that our heart longs for and knows as our potential, but also what is preventing inside of us that fulfillment of that longing, and to be held in compassionate, loving environments with skilled facilitators, teachers, therapists, which I think is really what is needed, and what these centers of light, with the kind of leadership and vision that they have, can gather people who have something to share, and those people can attract more people. And it's just something that is so obviously needed right now in the day and age that we live in. And interestingly, I think that in order to be in the light, it's very important to metabolize our shadows. And by being very curious, courageous, compassionate, and truthful about our own personal shadows. And in that process, somehow we start to attune ourselves and come in contact with our own personal light. We're able then to clear our eyes and our vision and recognize it in the others and support that in other people. And that has been, that's really been my work. And I honestly, I don't subscribe to us being the good guys and all the ones out there being the bad guys. It's a lot like what Roger was saying, you know, non-denominational, having an attitude that is curious and open, and I guess not being part of the problem, not creating more separation, but creating more unity and union and nourishment for the soul, for the people who really want to go on that journey, who really want to dive into it deeply. And so I take the place that we're all in this together. And I think that the circumstances that we find ourselves in right now, I mean, who could have ever imagined? You know, I've had so many different processes and groups canceled already. You know, what could have stopped the world and put us into uncertainty like this, an uncertainty which begs inquiry and begs to look a little bit deeper and to really learn, as I think it was Lawrence who said, responsibility, you know, which for me is like the ability to respond, not to react. And to be able to do that, we've got to look at ourselves and to really go deeply inside of what is it that we react to. And rather than adopt a righteous stance, we adopt a stance of curiosity, of self-compassion, of love of the truth. And in that we transform and we metabolize. I lead a process called the Path of Love, which is really a process where we put that longing on fire in all the participants. What is it that your soul is really crying out for? What is it that your heart really yearns for? And we let that longing be the person's guide to look at and bring forth whatever it is that they really, really passionately want and what's in the way. And so, you know, usually at the end of that process that people look around at each other and they say, you know what, you guys know me better than anybody else on the planet. I've never bared my soul so deeply. And I'm proud of that work. And I want to share it as much as possible. And that there are places like Broughton Hall, Broughton Hall. I say it wrong sometimes. Broughton Hall. I mean, not only is it ideally suited, but it is so beautiful. It's just like such an environment. It enhances the seeking and the way the beauty has been done and the way the nature is here. It's like, my God. As well as where I came from right before this, which was Blue Spirit. So I just want to say it's always time to wake up, but it's never been more a time to wake up. And it's time for a change. And what was it that Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world? I think that's a very appropriate statement right now. So thank you for listening and hope to meet you all. I'm very happy to be part of this discussion. Over to you, Roger. Paris.
Thank you, Rafia.
Thank you so much.
As always, thank you. Thank you. And I think, Rafia, it might be, I'd like to introduce Stefan next, but you know him a lot better than I do. My experience, Paris and I, about how many years ago, 6 or 7 years ago or something, we went to Omega Center, which Stefan co-founded or founded. And we had an amazing time there. And all these forerunners of light centers who were doing them years before their time, it's a bit easier for us. They've been testing out the scene. Yeah. But I just love the Omega Center, and now Stefan's at Blue Spirit, which you know well. And I'm wondering whether you could just say a tiny bit about Stefan before he talks, as he's a good friend of yours too, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, for years people were saying, you know, you really need to meet Stefan. And we finally came together in Costa Rica and sat down at a dinner table and understood almost immediately why people were saying that, because I think we launched into a conversation that hasn't stopped quite a few years later. And so I always try to make it part of my year to go to Costa Rica. And of course, I go there for the group, but I also go there to hang out with Stefan because he's one of the most intelligent and visionary people. He's been doing this sort of thing for a long time. And I'm real happy to introduce him along with you, Roger. Go, Stefan.
Hello. So nice, Rafia, to hear your introduction. And Roger in Paris, I'm really honored to be here with you all today. And I am calling from Costa Rica. Rafia left, but my wife and I haven't. And we just feel really honored to be in this place. It's become our home for now the last 15 years. I'm going to tell you a little about my journey to get here, because Rafia just said something from Gandhi, and I'm a physician, and I was in medical school in the early 70s, and there was something just awry with the whole thing, and I think there still is in the whole medical system, where what we're doing is focusing solely on disease and not at all about health, and health not just on the outer sense of the body, but the whole being, the mind, the spirit, and understanding. And even as I talk about the body, we could say it's one of the problems with our world right now. Our body is made of more than 30 trillion cells. And there's not any I in any one of those cells. We are an organism, and if one part of the body is gone, somehow we have the sense of I, but you can't find it. Yet our world these days is so focused on the I, and we've completely lost our touch with the we. So what these centers of light do is to try and create a place where we find each other. And that's been my work for many, many years. In medical school, toward the end of medical school, a professor came up to me and said, you seem a little different. Maybe you'd like to go work abroad. And she said, where would you like to go? I'll get you a grant. And I was sort of dumbfounded. This person I didn't know would say that, but my immediate response was, how about India? So I ended up in a hospital up 8,000 feet in the Himalayas, where the Tibetans were coming through from escaping Tibet, coming into India, and so on. And there I had the amazing good fortune to meet a saint that I had heard about, who had been with Gandhi during the Satyagraha movement in India. And he had gone to prison, been there for many years, but he was a professor from one of the universities. And so I would spend half my day with him just sitting in the temple. Nobody else really spent time with him. He was a renunciate. But as he said to me that, quoting Sri Aurobindo, that man can rise above death, disease, and decay. And since that, I realized that really has been my mission in life, is to find a way where people can come into true well-being, again, not just a body, but their whole being. And so I left India, and returning to the States, became involved in a community that the teacher of the community asked me to run it, and Pirvalai Khan, a Sufi teacher. And during that time, he had this vision of the Library of Alexandria, which had been demolished by the invading hordes, but at the time in Egypt, it was the largest library of wisdom tradition anywhere in the world. So we have a tendency, as wisdom is gathered, to somehow come and overthrow it, as seems to be happening in our world these days, where fiction and lies seem to carry more weight than what's actually true. And one needs to find out what's true within. So as we were developing this community of about 100 people, it became my role to figure out how we could survive over time. So one of the things I created at that time was this idea of Omega Institute, which was where we looked at Teilhard de Chardin's work, where Teilhard de Chardin spoke about the Omega point, and that's where we got the name Omega, where we could bring together all of the great teachings. And his Omega point was, when human beings recognize the power of love, it would be like discovering fire for the second time. So to me, what we're looking at is how do we really incorporate love in our lives. Is my dear, dear friend Rafia, I know his work is all about love, but finding love on a more than just a hedonistic level. It's finding love in the depth of who our being is, which requires the inner search, looking at meditation, really being involved in that inner work. Many years ago, I wrote a book called Time Shifting, which is about the fact that people are getting so fast. And this is over 20 years ago, and I look, my God, since then things have just gotten faster. So we respond online just, and there's not enough pause in our lives. So what I look at is that these centers of light is the opportunity for the pause. We need more pause in our life. We don't get it online. It's great that we have this opportunity to be online together, but unless we drop into this pause. So Omega, we would have at times 500 people. When Thich Nhat Hanh would come, we'd have 2,000 people. We bought an old camp that had been run down, and it still exists, and we still run programs. So right now, there's no active programs. It's all online. But about 15 years ago, I decided that it was time for me to create something new. And I looked around, and I had been running programs in the winter in the Caribbean, and I came to Costa Rica, and I have a love affair now with Costa Rica. My wife and I just feel ourselves more at home here than we've ever felt. Costa Rica is the greenest country in the Western Hemisphere. What makes Costa Rica so unique is President Figueres 70 years ago decided that he was going to abolish the army, even though there was strife throughout Central and South America. But in doing so, he took the money and put it to education and healthcare. So the people here are highly educated. It's often talked about as the Switzerland of Costa Rica, of South America, rather. So one of the things that has happened here also is that 50 years ago, the multinationals came to grow bananas, palm oil, and so on, and chop down from 70% of forest coverage down to 20%. And the daughter of President Figueres, who I've come to know quite well, who is a remarkable being here, Christiana Figueres, I was just in touch with her yesterday, she led a movement to increase it to back over 50%. So the country is dedicated to being a green country. And not only that, Christiana Figueres has taken that mission and moved it out because she's the one who worked with the United Nations, and she was the main architect of the Paris Climate Accord. So it's from the inner work that we're going to change the world. The world requires that we change our way of looking at things. One of the things that I do here is I have a well-being and longevity center that I've started to develop at Blue Spirit, as well as many of the different programs that we ran at Omega or at Broughton Hall is being, at Avalon is being produced. So again, we became one of these centers for light. But what I really see that is really my focus, and why we see that in the world where there seems to be sanity is in the small countries. When things get too large, it's like we humans become a cancer on the planet. So we have to look to the smaller. We have to look. And one of the things that I see in the model that I work with, which is all about longevity, is if by, let's say, age 25 or 30, you've grown to be 6 foot tall. By age 60, you don't grow to be 12 foot tall. Now, the interesting part about that is we continue to live as though we're still growing. We value growth, be it on the company level, on the internet level, on the personal level. The problem right now is that we continue to try and grow and grow and grow. And to me, what we need to do is interconnect. We need to have centers like this where people can come and restore. Unbridled growth is what in the medical world we call cancer. Cancer just keeps feeding on itself and growing. And to me, so many of the larger companies, so many of the larger corporations, so many of the larger countries in our world, corporations in our world, what they're simply doing is just this continual growth is better and better and better. And we know that's not so. So it's the reverse of growth. I expect that when people come here, it's so that they can retrieve the inner. They can really take the deeper dive where there's more quiet in their life instead of more noise. The internet is fantastic, but at the same time, the problem with the internet is it has us on and chatting all the time. And so I look at this virus we're dealing with. And the really fascinating thing is that we look at evolution and we think that evolution was this mutating genes. But the truth is, mutating genes isn't how we could have evolved as fast as we can. But just like in the computer, and we call them viruses in the computer, the virus brings RNA and DNA SNPs that go into our genetic makeup. So we're getting messages from the virus right now. And the virus is to change our ways. I really appreciate this time. I recognize there's a lot of suffering, but we humans have created a lot of suffering. We're not going to get through this without suffering. But there is a deep learning that can happen. And so I'm really honored to be here talking with you all. I think that for those of us who have the opportunity to dive deeper in, really understand our connectedness with the larger all, that's where things will change. And I just want to, almost as a shout out at Omega, I don't know if it was at Omega or Social Venture Network that I first met Jim Garrison. So Jim, I saw you as we began and realized, I don't think I've seen you since more than 40 years ago when I was just starting Omega and you were starting your work. So it's very good to see you here. And
very good to see you.
Thank you. And do come visit, Blue Spirit.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for your clarity and vision. I can't wait to see and learn more from you. Thank you.
Likewise, I want to come see you all.
I think we're hopefully going to be there in January.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that point about that word restoration. It's very soothing, isn't it? Restoration. I love that. And healing. Now to introduce Sophie.
Yeah.
I think is next. Paris, you've known Sophie a very long time, so I think you best introduce.
Yeah. So Sophie Nevill is a spectacular and wonderful human being. She's a spiritual teacher, a long-term meditator, and transpersonal psychotherapist. So she really can share a lot from the point of view of embodiment. And Sophie also has is going to be sort of a guardian of an estate down south called Eridge Park, just outside London, in Tunbridge Wells. So yeah, I think, would that share anything else?
No, I think Sophie's.
Yes. Oh, and yeah, so Sophie also studied transpersonal psychotherapy at Naropa University in Colorado, which is also a center of light. So over to you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Sophie, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you for the introduction, and very grateful to be a part of such a special gathering, and listening to everyone has been very inspiring. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. What can I say? So I started meditating when I was about 18, and I started teaching very quickly after that. Like probably 10 years ago, I started teaching. I was very excited by it. And I knew at that age that I'd been very blessed to live on an estate that I knew I was going to inherit. So the estate is just south of London. It's about an hour south of London, about 2,500 acres. And I always knew I was going to inherit it. And I had a very clear vision, probably at the age of 19, that the reason my soul had incarnated onto the land, into that family, was that because I was meant to use the land to anchor as much light as possible onto the planet. That was my vision and dream. And really in the last 10 years, I've just been building the foundation in myself, and visiting lots of different retreat centers and centers of light around the world, and working in organic farms, and spending 4 years training to be a psychotherapist, or so I can really create this vision. And in the last 2 years, it's been slowly starting to manifest. So running retreats on the land, meant to be running a festival this year called Awaken Festival, which is going to be like an embodied non-duality festival. Working with people from schools and seeing if there's a way that we can use the land to bring kind of vulnerable inner city children to the countryside, to do rites of passage, to help them connect more to the land. We have farm shops trying to work out how we can like live off the land and be sustainable, how the retreat centers can be sustainable. What else? Rewilding. Just baby steps, just starting to build that foundation. And I feel like these light centers, like everyone has said, is just really necessary at this time, that there's like a mass awakening happening on our collective, and that these kind of centers are holding the light so that people have this kind of place you can go to really drop into their essence and integrate that. I feel like, just speaking from my own experience, I had a very big awakening when I was in my early 20s, and then I trained as a psychotherapist. And so what I teach and what I work with people around is how do we become aware of the essential awareness and stillness and love that we innately are, and then how do we move that unconditional love and presence into every area, layer and facet of our humanity? How do we really integrate the awakening? Because the awakening is really just the first step. The rest of the journey is how do we move on a permanent way from the mind to the heart, from separation to unity, to the collective. And I also feel like in England, a lot of land has been privately owned and kind of kept for the few and the elite. And I think we're really needing to change that and see how we can use the land to support the collective now. How can we, and especially the collective awakening. I feel like in the past, awakening, one could argue, has been a bit more based around transcendence, around I'm not my mind, I'm not my body. One could argue maybe more male in its approach. And I feel like we're coming into a new wave, and what I teach is like, and similar to what everyone's been sharing so beautifully, is how do we actually embody this awakening? How do we start to live from a place of the heart? And we're not always taught that. Maybe we have an awakening experience, maybe we've seen a teacher or guru, but then we don't actually have a place we can go where we can really learn how to integrate that and live from that place. And I feel like for me and the center I'm looking to create, I feel like almost wanting to create like a womb-like space. It feels like our nervous systems are so fraught. And as we found in lockdown, like I noticed a lot with people I was working with, that there's just such a deep desire for rest, for stillness, to just allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to be. And I'm hoping that these light centers, very similar to what people said before, will offer this space where we can really drop into that place and just be, and allow these layers of our conditioning mind, of our the fear and the stress that we've accumulated in the cells of our body and our energy, and to really start to relax and shift and clear. And I think we can only really do it when we're held in a safe container, in a loving container. There are these retreats, which are beautiful, like Vipassana, which are great and can be so beneficial and helpful for people. But I think they can sometimes be too masculine in their approach, in the sense that you just sit still, don't move, close your eyes, focus on one thing. And actually, I think a lot of us are holding so much unconscious trauma in our system that to just sit there and not move can be too much and isn't actually that helpful. And I think what a lot of us really need is holding. My practice is called The Kindest Thing. How can we kind of move towards all these aspects, like Stefan said, the light and the dark, from a place of kindness and compassion. And I'm hoping to create this center that will really hold people in that way and nourish people in that way. And I think same with the festival, that I'm hoping to create like a really embodied non-duality kind of way, because it's the way of the heart. It's the next way of awakening that we are all going to be experiencing on a mass level. What else can I say? I think one thing that I feel is important with these centers, which I think has been mentioned before, is that I think they need to be accessible to everyone, because I think sometimes, obviously, in order for centers to be sustainable, it's that balance between how do we allow it to be sustainable and support itself, as well as being able to be open to all of the collective. So no matter your economic background, no matter where you come from. And so I'm also looking into ways that we can maybe run some more expensive retreats for people who can pay, so that can also help support people who can't pay. And also maybe working on the land for work trade. So that feels like a really important piece. But I just feel like we're going to see more and more of these centers, I think, arising on the planet in the next few years. And thank goodness it really is time, as Lawrence said, for this grid of light to start to be activated on the planet, so we can really start to support this shift from a really embodied and heart-centered way. So I think that's all I wanted to share. Thank you for the space to talk. I don't know if you guys can still see me. I'm just seeing a blank screen. Oh, I see Paris. Thank you, guys. Love you guys.
Thank you, Sophie, for your incredible work and being on a very similar mission to us, really. And it's lovely to know that all those people within the tribe. So thank you, Sophie. Now, next up is Brooks Cole. And Brooke is a technology inventor, philosopher, visionary, and transformational leader. We met Brooke, it's about a year ago, I think. There was a network for transformation leaders. We're doing a retreat here, and that's a group of about 60 top speakers, authors, trainers, and personal growth experts in the world. And they had an amazing few days, and we really enjoyed the energy to live around that and the work they were doing. So, but Brooks, his CV is too long for me to go through. He's a very impressive man, but he's next generational. And so, Brooke, I just straight over to you, really. Thank you very much for speaking today, and we look forward to your contribution.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thank you so much, Roger and Paris. It is so wonderful to see you again. Roger, I didn't have the opportunity to meet Paris when our group was there. I'll show you a funny picture here in a minute, but I'm so incredibly grateful and happy to be here with this extraordinary panel. And thank you to Peter and Humanity Rising, and thank you to my dear friend Lawrence Bloom, and wonderful new friends Stefan and Rafia and Jim and Richard and Sophie. So I'm coming with a slightly different take on the idea of centers of light. When I hear the term centers of light, I immediately think of the chakras. I think of the centers of light within, and I think of the centers of light without. And when I went to college, I was escaping a fundamentalist Baptist home where matter was what mattered, and there was a lot of finger wagging, and it was really wonderful to go into the arms of the University of Denver and philosophy, where I immediately set upon Buddhism, Einstein, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the Dancing Wu Lee Masters, Marilyn Ferguson's Aquarian conspiracy and the incredible profuse announcement that there was an incredible new age afoot. And I think there still is. I think it took a bit of a nosedive shortly thereafter. But I want to remind everybody about the etymology of the word techne. So technology is getting an appropriate spanking right now because it's been horribly abused because absolute power corrupts absolutely. But I just want to point out that the real etymology of the word techne, it's etymologically derived from the Greek that is translated as craftsmanship or craft or art. And my feeling is that we are the tool making apes. We use our abstraction and our communication and we create tools. And what we've managed to do with these incredible networks and these devices and the cyber, remember that cyber, as in cyber hacking and cyberspace, comes from the Greek hyper, which is the rudder. It simply means that which is navigable. So when I was in college, I was really looking for the essence of what consciousness was, because I noticed that even smart scientists, even the ones that said they were pursuing artificial intelligence, they couldn't really explain what consciousness was. And I really, really wanted to figure that out. So that has been my 40 years of wandering in the desert. Even though I had a marketing education, I much preferred philosophy and design, which is kind of what I've done. So I want to provide a bit of an ode to all of you from the place of making friends with the potential of technology to enhance and link and make these centers of light go deep. This is a story about centers of light, like the first light that lit up the universe, pouring stardust into centered swirls, spinning cosmic webs and orbs of light, coming to form Mother Gaia herself. The centers of light that gave life to form, that evolved light-filled beings into the spark of light and life that filled your mother and brought you, centered, into this world, are the centers of love light connected to oneness. And as you grew and spun into this world, a certain complexity, uncertainty, chaos came in with the others, revolved around as you followed your circuitous path, triumphs and tragedies and joys and pitfalls. And glorious centers of light like fungi have emerged from the mycelia of Earth. Avalon, Dominator, Omega, Esalen, scintillating like stars in the firmament, guiding those who would seek epiphany. Now the world is dappled, challenged, full of the interplay of light and darkness. Humanity needs centers of light to magnetize the compass and align the wanderers to heal and support and transform and ennoble. Though you be lost, yet you have a secret. You are already connected to the network of networks. The antidote in the forest is always just steps away from the poison. If you can't go outside, go inside. Use your tools and come back to center. Center yourself, connect to the centered others. You were born with all the spiritual technology to become whole again, to return wholeness to yourself, to your relationships, to your families, to your tribes, and to the new earth. Connect more deeply and come back to center. So my basic message can kind of be encapsulated in this photograph of my group, the Network for Transformational Leaders, at a masquerade ball at the Great Broughton Hall. This was just the most fun week ever. We basically decided that it was Downton Abbey, only later to learn that it was in fact the second choice for Downton Abbey. And I think it would have been a better one. So that's me there on the left with my moon mask. And there's me on the right in Skipton's album pub, where I found an album from my uncle, Frank Zappa. My mother is Anne Zappa, and this was quite a moment for me. So I'm coming through the lens of two things. We're developing a consciousness engine. It's called Holo. And we have a soul branding company that's called ResonantBrand. And the basic idea all comes back to center. So I say COVID rang the bell of the earth and split the screens in two. And we have the Armageddon channel and we have the New Earth channel. And the Armageddon channel is really on 24/7 and is pounding it out. And we know that this information that we seem to be able to navigate is not free. We are the product. This information about us is being slurped away from us as if we're being farmed like aphids. A certain search engine company promised the world to give us and organize the world of information for us, and also to do no evil. But in 2015, they dropped that farce. And then there's the idea of 400 million answers for the average query, but in fact, you never see 400 million answers. Where did the rest of that information go? It's actually like a movie set where you have something that looks like a building, but it's actually flat. And then there's concerns about what technology is doing to child development and to our behavioral and mental wellness. But I say that the light is at hand. I say that the antidote co-arises with the poison, and that this is the perfect time for us to re-examine where this technology came from and what it can do for us. This is Buckminster Fuller, who famously was an advocate of ephemeralization, the idea that increasingly atoms will matter less and bits and information will matter more. And I think that's where we're at. I think we're coming back to the center of self, the connection to self. Know thyself, as the oracle points to the sign, to educate Neo on how he needs to become the one to know thyself. I say that basically the future of information is in our hands. It's just a tool. A saw can build a house, or it can cut your arm off, depending upon how you use it. We need to use these tools with intention and with spirit, and then we can get so much more than we're getting from them now. Right now, we're using them very passively. And Google, if you search for happiness, it just gives you a dictionary definition, a movie, a Psychology Today article. I say that we are living in a richness, an embarrassment of riches of information that needs to be turned into knowledge and into wisdom and into mastery. So to do that, we need to atomize the information that is all around us, that is being shoved at us and presented in certain forms that opaque the value that we can get and the ennoblement that we can get from this information, and instead put it into forms that revolve around us. So this is the moment with the new internet that is emerging, new decentralized internet that is very different from the controlled internet of the past, is coming into view now. And it allows us to think about the prospects of regaining our digital autonomy, meaning our data is our data, and our actions are our actions, and our communications belong to us. Our friends belong to us. All of these points of light, they are a network of networks, and as glorious as they are to visit, they should be also available to everyone to visit and connect with virtually. And all of them should be connected with each other. We have the opportunity to consciously co-create. This is the wheel of co-creation from Barbara Marx Hubbard. This should be a tool available to all of us. And the idea behind it is that we gather together, and it doesn't matter who's the author. It matters what is the product of collaboration. This is the new way we can connect to each other, both in centers of light and virtually. We need to have a passport, a center of light passport that connects and controls and safeguards and enables us to have a wallet of our data, all this information about who we are, what we aspire to, all these things that are part of the human character that are not able to be pinned by orange scientific reductionist views of big data. They don't know anything about our thoughts and our dreams and our aspirations. However, we do, and we should have the self-reflection. Every time we go to a new center of light, we should tick the passport and add to the bounty of information we know about ourselves and the people that we meet. So I would say technology is the dragon. There are three things you can do with the dragon. You can run away, in which case you get burned alive. You can run towards, in which case you get eaten, or You can jump on the back of the dragon and you can ride it. Technology should be our tool. We should command it. We should be in charge of it. We need not fear it if we simply step in, take responsibility, and take charge of that information. And then we can connect all the centers of light. They can all be one glorious mycelial connection. And that's what it is. There is oneness among us. And in case we need filthy lucre to drive the situation, centers of light are fountains of plenty. They are part of the $1.4 trillion wellness tourism market. And my suggestion is we are the centers of light that we've been waiting for. And my personal goal is to awaken 1 billion individuals to achieve their full potential. And that is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow.
Brooks, that's absolutely
Incredible.
brilliant. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It just warms the cockles of my heart to be on this panel with you. Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
I've been very animated by your talk.
Yeah, some wonderful graphics, and I could just listen to you all day.
Thank you. We're coming to Broughton to wire you up, connect you to the mycelial network of the great Earth.
We're open. Yeah. Thank you, Brooks. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Brooks. Thanks, everybody. And, we've gone a little bit over, so we've only got 10 minutes or so for a little bit of interaction. But let's take that. And the question, I guess, I was sitting with also reading the chat of some people who are thinking of starting their own centers and things that maybe we could share a bit around is, what do you think it is that makes for a successful center of light? What are the conditions for success, do you think? And I'm opening this to anybody on the panel. Can be about the land, the physical place, the culture, whatever you feel it is. What are the key ingredients for a successful physical, let's say for now, physically, geographically located center of light?
There have been a few really nice points actually on the chat, Peter. I can't remember who it was particularly that shared these points, but someone said, there's a need for sort of radical honesty and authenticity and openness. And that's something that feels really true in my heart, to be really open with our shadows and to be open with how we walk our talk, and, that we're not just saying, we promote all these things, but actually how we do it on the ground. And I think, there have been many gurus who have ended up doing all sorts of things in the background. And so that's why Roger sort of mentioned the inner guru rather than the outer guru. Yeah. And also someone mentioned something as well about bridging, the importance of bridging separation and bringing people of all sorts of different backgrounds together. And that's another thing that I think is very important, to work at dissolving the separation and pointing the finger. Raffia said, we so often there's pointing the finger, and there's three fingers pointing back at us, and the responsibility that we can take as individuals. That's something that just keeps coming up. Yeah.
Right. I noticed that Stefan unmuted himself.
I had a couple of points. Over the years, I've had the great opportunity to work and consult with a lot of centers as they're developing. And one of the things that I feel is most important is our authenticity. And in that, marketing, sometimes a desire to get people to come works against authenticity. And for instance, if I have a wonderful place and there's a smokestack right next to it, I'm going to, marketing wise, I'm going to take the photo without the smokestack in it. So I love when people come to Blue Spirit, or we come to Omega and say, oh, this is so much better than I imagined. So I'm really looking for attracting people who really feel committed to what we're doing, feel that it's something, and then they'll meet people also who, instead of trying to get a lot of people, it's getting the people who really are most drawn to it, so that the people they're intermingling with are also deeply involved in this. And then it starts to create this sort of what I consider a wave pattern in a way. So that's what I'm always looking for, is how do we, in medicine, when you would tie a wound up with sutures, there was a kind of way in which it was a purse knitting, where you would go around and make sure that you were hitting every point along the circle and that everything was coherent. And so to me, coherence is really a critical part, so that when people come, they feel through and through the authenticity.
Great. Thanks, Stefan. Sophie, I was going to put you on the spot as well on this. I mean, as you're thinking about, inheriting this land and what you're going to do with it, you must be kind of, in a way, making a list somewhere of, okay, these are the kind of principles, or these are the things I want to guide me as I develop this land. What are you kind of holding as being the key conditions you think to be able to create a successful center of light? And by the way, Sophie, last time some people found it quite a little bit hard to hear you. So if you're able to get a bit closer to the mic.
I saw that. I was like, damn it. I hope someone heard something of what I said.
Yeah, I heard it fine. So
good. I hoped you wouldn't ask me, because I was kind of like, I don't feel adequate in answering it, because I still haven't fully established it. But I think what I'm learning is just to be really humble, just as I was listening to everyone talk, it's just really allowing myself to receive all the wisdom that's out there. And I feel like what I've learned on this journey so far is how kind everyone is in terms of wanting to support, because it's not really, we're not in competition. I think everyone has this unique center that they all can bring their unique essence to. And so what I found is just asking so many people who run retreats or other things and going to actually work there has been really, really helpful for me to see what I might think works, what doesn't work. Really, even going to Broughton Hall, once they set up, I was like, hey guys. And that was really useful to see what I would want to take and what I wouldn't, what might work down in the park and what wouldn't. And I think also working with the land, the land is already there, so I'm very blessed to have that land, and actually consciously working out, what does the land want? Yeah, I think that's been a really deep lesson for me. We've kind of run festivals on the land before that haven't felt in alignment with the land and haven't been a very high vibrational, one could argue, festival. And so I think just being really conscious in that respect, but I think just remaining humble and just asking for advice and help from people who have done it before is what I've learned so far. And I'm already starting to get a team together of people I really trust. I feel like that's going to be quite important as well, people I can really create with and who share the same vision. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Good luck, by the way. And Rafia, I was just thinking, you've probably been to many of these different centers of light teaching over the years. And some of them must feel more alive, vibrant, aligned than others. I'm going to put you on the spot as well. What's your sense of what the key conditions are for creating, a successful center of light on the ground?
I think that the vision that was shared with Paris and Roger was really big. It wasn't just, some people do it because they love groups and they want to open up a center and they want to make money. And I kind of feel like, wow, that is one of the hardest jobs in the world, is running a center. And yet when people have a really big vision with it, as I think Stefan does, as I think Roger and Paris do, and I could name quite a number of other places where I've come really close with the people who owned it, and it basically arose out of their own experience and their desire to share that with more people. And I was kind of laughing when Stefan was talking, because I was thinking of a place that I've worked at a couple of times that's really beautiful in southern Germany, and it happens to be right next to a nuclear power plant. And they don't show in the pictures the big stacks rising out of the side. And everybody kind of goes to a little freak out when they get there. But actually, they hold the space with so much integrity and so much good intention that, you know, you forget about the nuclear stacks. So and I think it's an evolving thing. I think it requires an attunement with what's going on right now, and an inner inquiry all the time. Does what we're offering really represent my deepest desire or ambition, or what's really poignantly relevant right now? You know, what is the cutting edge? And the willingness to kind of pull back, change programs, adapt, not always making the financial choice, but playing it on the edge. You know, you got to be out on the edge a bit, because it is a fast changing world right now, and taking risks to invite a very eclectic band of people to come and do their work there, and then, you know, the beauty of the place, the aesthetic, the quality of the food, the et cetera, that we all appreciate very much, are important as well. But it's more the vision. And I mean, I was with Stefan when everything got closed down, and he was like, okay, my whole thing is canceled for the next year. I had a whole program lined up. He said, let's just see what wants to happen. Maybe the face of this whole place changes. Maybe what happens here changes. And I just love that spirit, you know, and I feel Roger and Paris are in that as well. So I've visited so many, it's true. I've worked in hundreds of them. Some of them I was glad to leave. And mostly the experience have been very positive, just by the heartfulness and the extreme dedication that it takes to hold a place like that.
Beautiful. Great. Thank you, Rafia. And thanks, everybody. I'm going to hand it back to Paris and Roger for a last couple of words before we bring Jim in to wrap it up, as we're out of time. So Paris and Roger, anything to say to round this off?
Paris?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm extremely grateful for all that's been said today, and everybody helping, and all that's happening, really. I think it's an extraordinarily exciting time to be living in. There's obviously great change has to occur. We can't go on as we have been. I think these centers of light are going to form a worldwide tapestry, whether Brooke's digital one or physical, and I think they can give us great hope and great love in the future, and be a really good guiding points for us all. So I look forward to see their evolution. And here at Avalon, we just want to help everybody else doing the same thing. You know, it's from the heart, it's from the spirit. It's an act of service, really.
Yeah.
And
yeah, just so grateful for everyone who's plugged in and joined us, and everyone who's been contributing to the chat, and wish I could answer, you know, so many of the things that people have been sharing. But yeah, it really, I think what it comes down to is really with our center of light within. So let's just keep doing the work and keep holding ourselves in our heart. And yeah, just very grateful to be part of this. So thank you to Humanity Rising, to you, Peter, to you, Jim, and our lovely and extremely wise panelists who have joined us today. Thank you so much for taking part.
Great. Well, thank you both for the work that you do, and for pulling together this session as well. And looking forward to seeing you in August. Can't wait to get back to Yorkshire. Jim.
Wow, what an amazing session. I've just been here on the edge of my seat, feeling completely inspired by each and every one of you. And it's hard to kind of tease out a single theme for me as we conclude. But I would just mention one thing. it feels to me that, you know, in answer to Peter's last question, that light communities, having for millennia been essentially land-based, stable, and contributing within the context of a equilibrium that one could assume was basically predictable. We're no longer in that world, and light communities to survive, as Rafia was pointing out with Stefan's center down in Costa Rica and all the centers that have been used to bringing people to a certain site, which requires travel, accommodations, and all kinds of the accoutrements of social living and in-person interactivity. We've just seen in the last 6 months that entire model completely upended. And so I think, you know, what Brooks was bringing in for me is really the challenge. As one of the panelists said in one of our sessions last week, the basic challenge for all of us is that we have to now move at the speed of change. And one person has pointed out that knowledge in the world is doubling every 12.5 minutes. And so we're in a maelstrom of not only unpredictability, but we're in a maelstrom of escalating change, at the center of which is runaway climate change. So at one level, things are getting better and better, worse and worse, faster and faster, as it's been often said. But it's the velocity that humanity now has got to calibrate everything in accordance to. And how the light communities create this mycelial web, as Brooks was calling for, I think is going to require extremely careful thought and very delicate balancing between what we have inherited from the past as we enter into a future that is completely unknown and unpredictable. So I really want to honor the integrity with which each and every one of you has contributed to this moment. And I would say, Roger, Paris, Stefan, I mean, what Stefan did in Omega Institute was one of the great centers in the entire United States and the world. I would say Omega, along with Esalen, really helped shape, you know, the human potential movement and all these things that have contributed to the integration of insight and human potential into the mainstream culture. You know, I think it would be worth thinking about another panel just around this question of how light communities shape shift into the future. Land, internet, the noosphere, geoenergetics. It's a whole new world out there, and it's extremely exciting. It's extremely exciting. And so Humanity Rising, which in its own way is emerging as a light center, completely online, 2 hours a day. And more people and organizations are joining because they're finding light here. How many people have been illumined by just what you have shared just in the last hour and a half? And then it's going to be sent out worldwide. So the ability of all of us to be shaping the conversations that we're all in, because that's one of the things that's happened with the pandemic. It's put the entire world in the same conversation. So we have an opportunity, the like of which we have never had before, to bring light into a world of darkening, chaotic, centrifugal madness. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all. Now, tomorrow, we're going to meet again, same time, same station, 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. Central European Time. Tomorrow is the 14th of July. So we're going to celebrate Bastille Day, in part because I'm in France. The French Revolution has been the paradigmatic revolution of the modern era. We're in revolutionary times. There's no more normal. There's no more neutral ground. All of us are being affected by what's happening. That's revolution. And the question we're going to ask ourselves is, what can we learn from the French Revolution that can inform and inspire us today? So thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Roger and Paris and the panel. Love this session. And we'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye.